Hello, it is Tuesday, August 18th. This is your CRC update. I'm back again. Thank you for taking a few minutes to watch this video. I'm going to share a couple announcement kind of things and then just a few thoughts. I hope that will be an encouragement to all of us. It just feels pretty overwhelming, the time of the life that we're in. So a couple announcements. First is just a reminder that our current worship schedule continues. We have a 9 a.m. online service and we have a 10 a.m. outside worship service. And this Sunday is communion, so I want to encourage you, whether you're online or coming to our outside worship service, encourage you to take responsibility for your own communion. We will have some elements here for our outside worship service, but if you are able, we just encourage you to bring your own. We also met with consistory this last week, and one of the key things that came out of that is just we're in this process with our denomination around what's going to happen, and there's been lots of conversation. It's been a conversation that's been taking decades, but in some ways it feels like it's coming to some resolution, and we are putting together a team of a couple consistory members and maybe some at-large folks in our church and one of our staff members to just help us navigate both collecting the information about what's going on in our denomination and kind of what's coming up in the decisions that are being made, also being in touch with other churches and our classes as they too are walking through this process, and then really making a good commitment to communicating clearly to all of you kind of what is taking place. And so that team is in the process of being formed. I hope that you'll be able to hear from that team here in the next couple months so you can get up to speed as to what's taking place in our denomination. But just encourage you to continue praying that God would lead us as a church, Community Reformed Church, but also lead us as a denomination. And then I wanted to share a few thoughts today. It just feels like it's been a really heavy week with school coming up, and obviously I have kids, and a lot of those decisions are hard, and there's obviously lots of different feelings and perspectives, and then with the sports questions that are taking place, and then you put on top of that election coming up, it just feels like there's a lot going on, and it feels somewhat exhausting, and my guess is you're experiencing some level of that. And so I wanted to share a few things just about kind of some common things that take place in our lives in the midst of anxiety, and then a word of encouragement from the book of Thessalonians. So what's true when we're anxious, what's true when we're feeling kind of emotionally overwhelmed, is there's some reactive ways of behaving that are pretty normal for us as human beings. They're not necessarily good, but they're normal. One is when we're getting overwhelmed and we feel uncertain, and one of our common responses is to run away. We distance. And I've seen that within kind of what's going on Facebook at times. People just, I can't be friends with you. I can't have anything to do with you. I have to stop myself from seeing your posts because of what you're saying or what you're posting. It's a pretty common response, is we distance. You know, and sometimes in our relationships it means I run out of the room and slam the door. Or I just say I can't talk about this anymore. It's a pretty common response. Another one that's we're seeing in some pretty hurtful ways and divisive ways is instead of running away, we attack. And it's kind of like that cornered animal that when we're feeling threatened, when we're experiencing some level of fear, we attack. And you see it in the name calling. You see it in the us versus them kinds of thinking. You see it in the quick statements of condemnation. You see it in the hurtful things, moving from opinions to personal really quickly. That's one of the ways that we attack. And one of the other pieces that often comes place in the midst of our anxiety is we look for somebody to blame. The psychologists call that projection. We project the struggle that we're having inside onto somebody else. And so we blame the government, we blame a political party, we blame a person, We blame our spouse. We take out our emotions on those who aren't responsible for them. And it's unhelpful. And so those are three of the really common ways that we navigate anxiety, and I encourage you to be open to the ways that you see that within yourself, because seeing that is one of the steps towards moving forward in the midst of it. So let me read what it says in 1 Thessalonians. This is chapter 5, verses 11. It's a real simple thing. He says, "Therefore encourage one another and build one another up." And in light of all that's taking place, I want to really challenge us to take that posture, to encourage one another and build one another up. It's so tempting to allow the anxiety, the emotions, the fear that we're experiencing, the uncertainties, to drive us to reactive behaviors. And it's pretty natural, but it's often very harmful and unhelpful when we allow those emotions to drive our behaviors. And so it's really important that we embrace a posture of compassion and grace and humility. And those are foundational characteristics of Jesus Christ, and they're attributes that he calls us to reflect to each other. One of the ways that we encourage and build each other up is we operate from the posture of compassion and grace and humility, because it's exactly what Jesus has done for us. You know, one of the helpful things to have in your head, I think, is this acronym THINK. When you're feeling like you need to say something, or feeling like you need to post something, or feeling like you need to do something, this acronym of THINK is really helpful for me. Is it true, what I want to say? And sometimes that takes a little bit more work than just that I want it to be true, but is it really true? And maybe that requires doing a little research or having another conversation before I just go out and spout out what I want to be true. So is it true? Is it helpful? Is what I'm about to say, is what I'm about to do, is what I'm about to post helpful? Is it going to be helpful to people? Is it inspiring? Right? Is it going to inspire people in the right direction? Is it going to do what 1 Thessalonians says, encourage and build up? Is it going to draw people's attention towards Christ? Is it going to reflect that compassion and that grace and that humility? Is it necessary? Right? Is what I'm about to say really necessary? If you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. We've all heard that. Is it necessary for me to express or do or post what I'm tempted to post or say or do? And the last one, is it kind? Is it really driven by that love and compassion that God calls us to have for each other, with that commitment to encourage and build one another up? Doesn't mean we can't speak our truth at times, doesn't mean we can't have opposing views on certain issues, but we navigate that with kindness and gentleness and reverence, as the Bible says. So I think that acronym is helpful as we kind of navigate this call to encourage and build each other up. And in the midst of all the divisiveness and all the differences of opinions and perspective and all the polarization that's part of what's taking place, may we, as followers of Jesus Christ, lead the way in being truthful and helpful and inspiring and kind. May we say that which builds people up and encourages people. And may we operate and continue to operate from a deep sense of compassion and grace and humility. Because when we know, when we see what's true about who Jesus is and what he's done for us, when we experience the compassion that he's offered to us, when we live in the grace in spite of our brokenness and sin, and we live in the gift of his forgiveness, and when we take that posture of seeing what he's done for us, which is a posture of humility, it really helps us then to be people who do what Paul says in Thessalonians, to encourage and to build one another up. We need to lead the way as followers of Jesus Christ in all that's taking place. May we encourage one another to do that. And may we continue to remember that we can turn our attention to God at any moment and ask for his help. I hope this is helpful for you today, and I hope that you have a great week.